Hey everyone, hope you guys are having a wonderful day. My name is Ben Orth. I'm currently a running start student at SFCC, and I'm taking the English 102 class where we are exploring a problem in society. I decided to research the problem of procrastination. Procrastination is super evident in the world that we live in. I've experienced it, many of my friends have experienced it, and I'm sure you have as well. And so we're going to look into today, what is procrastination, what are its negative effects, why does someone procrastinate, and then how can we overcome procrastination? So with that being said, my research question for this study was, what makes procrastination appealing despite its negative effects, its negative consequences, and how can someone overcome it? And so it's going to be a fun journey. Stick along to learn more. Part one is, what is procrastination? Well, let's lay down a simple definition. Procrastination is the action of delaying or postponing something that should be done. So a lot of times these things tend to be tedious, or they tend to be hard. Maybe you have an essay that's due in a week, and so instead of starting on it today, you push it back, and all of a sudden the essay is due 1 day from now, and now you have to crunch time and work on it. That is procrastinating. Maybe you're trying to go to bed at 10 p.m., but instead you go on your phone and you scroll through Instagram or watch a video for 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden it's 10:30 and you miss the time that you wanted to go to bed. That is another example of procrastination. So we tend to procrastinate things that are hard, that are challenging, that aren't necessarily very fun to do. And so I really like this TED Talk that I had the chance to listen to. It's called Why You Procrastinate Even When It Feels Bad. And it said this, I like this quote: "Procrastination is when we avoid a task we said we would do for no good reason, despite expecting our behavior to bring negative consequences." And so we have a lot of tasks that we are supposed to do, but procrastination is the act of delaying those, saying, I'm not going to do that right now, even though you know that it's going to lead to negative consequences, which we'll touch on later. And one more other quote that I really liked, it's called What is Procrastination by Very Well Mind. And it says, whether you're putting off finishing a project for work, avoiding homework assignments, or ignoring household chores, procrastination can have a major impact on your job, grades, and life. In most cases, procrastination is not a sign of a serious problem. It's a common tendency that most people resort to at some point. So I really like the framework that Very Well Mind uses here. It explains some very typical ways that someone might procrastinate, and how those ways of procrastination can actually lead to big changes, major changes in life, in your grades, and in your job. And so we see that procrastination, while it might be a minor problem, it can impact some really big problems, some big aspects of your life. And so now let's dive into the two types of procrastination. The two types of procrastination. The first type is active procrastinators. Active procrastinators delay the task purposefully because working under pressure allows them to feel challenged or motivated. And so how I like to put this is, active procrastinators try to clutch up in the last moment. They try to make a buzzer beater, They wait till the last day to crunch out their entire essay and then turn it in, because they believe that they work better when they have a little bit of time to work. The other type of procrastinators are passive procrastinators. Passive procrastinators delay the task because they have trouble making decisions and acting on them. And so passive procrastinators are uncertain about how to do something or what to do about something. And so instead of asking questions, or instead of reaching out to figure out how to do it, they just put it off until later. And so these are the two overarching types of procrastinators: active, which do it at the last second because they feel they work best, and passive, which they just don't understand how to do it, so they delay even getting started. Now, these are the major types of procrastination, these two, but there's also a lot of micro types of procrastinators, and these include perfectionists, overdoers, worriers, and many more, etc. But these are smaller categories that I'm not going to touch on this time around. So to finish off, what is procrastination, the first part of my video, I want to look at some statistics. These statistics come from a website called Solving Procrastination, and all of these websites that I touch on will be linked below. So the first statistic we're going to dive into is this. It says, studies show that around 50% of college students procrastinate in a consistent and chronic manner. Chronic means it's a habit. It's not just once every so often. It's once a day, once a week. It's something that's a habit in their life. 75% of these college students consider themselves to be procrastinators, and 80 to 95% of college students procrastinate. That is a huge number. 80 to 95% of college students procrastinate. Approximately half, 50.7% of people who were surveyed reported frequently using the internet to procrastinate. And so, like I said earlier, maybe you're trying to go to bed at 10, but you go on your phone for a little while and all of a sudden it's 10:30. You use the internet to procrastinate. Studies show that 20% of adults procrastinate chronically. So we see that this is a problem not only in college students, but it builds from that into adults' lives. And that's when life is really important. You know, you have a job, you have a family, you have a lot of things that require you to be disciplined and not procrastinate. And so we see that if you start procrastinating in your college years or in your high school years, it can really lead to more procrastination down the road. And then the last statistic I'm going to share for you as of right now is in a study on an adult sample, 74% of people who were surveyed indicated they go to bed later than planned at least once a week with no external reason for doing so. And so that goes back to what I've touched on multiple times. You know, going to bed is kind of tedious. You know, you don't always want to go to bed early so you can get up early. Instead, we want to stay up late and then have to go through the dread of being tired tomorrow. And so we tend to procrastinate things that are hard or challenging. So now we understand what procrastination is, how prevalent it is, and so let's explore some of the negative consequences that comes with it as well. All right, let's dive into part 2, which is the negative effects of procrastination. So as I touched on earlier, procrastination in its own doesn't exactly make big changes in your life, but what it can do is make a snowball effect and lead to some really negative effects in your grades or your relationships or your health and many, many other areas. And so we're going to dive into that and explore the negative effects of procrastination a little bit. So let's start by doing just that. Well, what do we see when people procrastinate? We see higher levels of stress and anxiety, which is really contradictory to why someone might procrastinate. People often procrastinate because they want to lower their stress or they want to lower their anxiety, but that's not true. Procrastination actually leads to an increase of stress and anxiety. We also see increased strain on relationships and resentment or bitterness towards family members, coworkers, fellow classmates, teachers, all of the above. And lastly, we see higher levels of cheating in school. Think about it. If you wait to do a paper until the very last day, you are much more likely to use AI or to plagiarize in your paper. This is all of these effects are very, very evident when someone procrastinates. So let's dive into some statistics. And again, these statistics come from Procrastination Statistics. It's a website. Feel free to check it out. It has a lot of great statistics on procrastination. So first statistic, when students were asked how they felt after procrastinating, 80% of their responses were categorized as negative. People procrastinate because they think it makes them feel good, but no, 80% say, it's negative. 94% of people indicated that procrastination has a negative effect on their happiness, and 18% indicated that it had an extreme effect. Thirdly, procrastination is negatively correlated with various aspects of academic performance. I'm not going to dive into the numbers that are shown here, but it includes performance on just assignments, performance in final exams, performance on your grade point average, overall academic performance. Everything drops when procrastination is used. And so lastly, our last statistic, procrastination is associated with approximately a $15,000 drop in salary according to a large-scale study. And so we see, this was in 2013 money too, so $15,000 in 2013 is more or is less than it is today in 2025. And so we see procrastinating, it leads to not only a drop in academics, but also in the long run, it can lead to making less money. And so these statistics are great because they really are eye-opening to see, okay, what does procrastination lead to in the real world? And we see that procrastination leads to a lot of negative effects. I had the privilege of interviewing two of my good friends and my dad. And I asked them a lot of questions about procrastination, their experience with it, what areas they procrastinate, but specifically when asked about the negative effects they face when procrastinating, here's what they explained. My dad, his name is Bart, he explained that when he procrastinates, he in the work field, he experiences higher levels of stress and increased tension in relationships with his coworkers. And we see that's a first-hand example of stress, how procrastination leads to higher levels of stress. My friend Jalen, he had a lot of frustration in his last final exam because he procrastinated it. He waited till the last few days to do this project, and when he read over the rubric, a lot of questions were raised up, but he didn't have time to go to his professor and ask those questions, and so he had to gut it out, and he ended up getting a bad grade on it, and he was very frustrated with how it went down. Lastly, my buddy Tanner, he explained how when he procrastinates, he typically procrastinates by not reading his Bible, and this leads to a detriment in his relationship with God, a detriment in his relationships with other people, and overall just gets his mental game off cue. So we know, based on first-hand examples, based on statistics, based on research studies, that procrastination leads to negative effects. And while procrastination in itself might not seem like a big deal, it can lead to some really big deal negative effects. And so why do we do it? Part number 3 is the why behind procrastination. I want to begin with sharing a little piece of this TED Talk that I got to listen to called Why You Procrastinate and How to Stop It for Good by Elisa Smith. She explained how procrastination is often used as a coping mechanism and is used to block out stress. And I love the analogy that she used. She explained how, imagine that you are running a race and your shoes are untied and you keep tripping over your shoelaces. And so you fall down and you cut up your knee, and instead of tying your shoelace, no, you just put a Band-Aid over the wound. And you keep doing that, and then your Band-Aid falls off and you cut yourself again, and then you need to put on a new Band-Aid. She explained how procrastination is just like that Band-Aid. It works for a short period of time, but then it doesn't actually solve anything. And so she explained how being able to overcome procrastination starts with actually targeting the root cause of it. A Band-Aid doesn't do the job. You need to tie your shoelaces. So let's dive into some of the more common reasons why people procrastinate. We're going to go through these rather quickly. For many people, the task is just simply unpleasant, or it's challenging, or it's tedious. Maybe someone is disorganized and they underestimate how long the task will take, or the resources that they will need to do the task in a good manner. Maybe they are simply overwhelmed by what the task entails, and they doubt their skills, they doubt their ability to be able to do the task. Or maybe they're a perfectionist, and they never feel satisfied with the finished product of any of the tasks they have done in the past, and so they don't even start this one. In fact, statistics shows us that 8% of people state that low confidence was their root cause of procrastination. And so being able to overcome procrastination begins with finding the root cause of our procrastination. Well, let's look a little bit at the brain. What do we see with the brain? Well, our brain is actually wired to seek instant gratification. There's a part of our brain called the nucleus accumbens, aka the NA, and it's our brain reward system to seek out instant gratification. And so when we seek out this instant gratification, or when we go on our phone instead of doing a paper that we need to write, we release something called dopamine, and this brings a sense of pleasure, brings a sense of everything's good, everything's okay. And when we feel that sense of dopamine, we tend to chase after that. And that's why it becomes so easy to create these habits of procrastination, because our brain gets in the habit of pursuing that dopamine release. But there's another part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, which specializes in delayed gratification and self-control. But if it's not worked on, and if it's not developed, then it is quickly overcome by the NA. And so that's something that we have to develop and we have to work on. So let's dive into some of the statistics we see about procrastination. Well, approximately 50% of people state that procrastination was due to some task characteristics. One main task characteristic we see is that it's just boring, or the task is unpleasant, or it's hard. And then the other one is the timing of the punishments and rewards, aka the task that has rewards or punishments that are far in the future. That goes hand in hand with, we like to seek instant gratification rather than delayed gratification. Delayed gratification is in the future, far in the future. Secondly, studies suggest that tiredness is one of the top 3 reasons students give in putting off work. And approximately 28% of students said they were too tired to start on a project, so they just didn't do it at all. And then lastly, people sometimes procrastinate because the underlying fear of failure. 7 to 16% of people said fear was their main reason of procrastination. When I was doing interviews with a couple of my friends and my dad, this is what they explained to me when asked about why they procrastinate. My dad explained to me how it was the harder or longer task that he tended to avoid. My buddy Jalen explained how he feels an incentive to seek comfort in the moment rather than being disciplined in overcoming a task. And then my friend Tanner said it was a lack of discipline with those tedious tasks that led to him procrastinating. And so the reality is there's no way to escape these tedious tasks. So in order to overcome them, we need to train our minds to prioritize the right things. And that leads into part 4. Let's dive into part number 4, and I'm sure it's the part you've been waiting for all video long. It's this: how to overcome procrastination. How can you end your journey with procrastination for good? I'm going to lay out 5 practical tips for becoming a master of self-discipline, and I hope that these will really help you to battle against procrastination and accomplish the tasks that are tedious and challenging in a timely manner. So let's dive right into it. Point number 1 is figure out the root cause of your procrastination and address it directly. Just like the story with the shoelace in the race, you have to address the root cause of the problem, not just cover it up with something that's temporary. So let me give you a couple examples. Maybe the root cause of your procrastination is your fear of failure. Well, you can address this by transitioning to a growth mindset. And instead of seeing mistakes as fatal, you can see mistakes as learning opportunities to grow and to get better. Maybe that's your fix. Or maybe your root cause is that you just feel really overwhelmed. Well, you can address this by starting with one very simple, small action step to build momentum into the task that you are trying to overcome. The bottom line is understanding why you procrastinate is the first step into overcoming it. Understanding why you procrastinate is the first step into overcoming the procrastination that you are facing. Point number 2 is make a to-do list. Master your schedule. This is so simple, yet so beneficial. If you can make a simple to-do list every morning when you wake up, these are the tasks that I need to do, and list them by importance. So if it's something that's really important, you're going to do that first. And you're going to get that out of the way right in the morning. My friend Jalen, this is something that worked really well for him. And what he would do is he would set deadlines for himself. And so, say the essay was due on Friday. He'd set a deadline that said, okay, by Tuesday, I need to have my rough draft done. And by Thursday, I need to be done with my essay. So he set his own deadlines to help him accomplish his task. He mastered his schedule. And this is what you need to do. You need to make a to-do list and master your schedule. Maybe that will help you. Point number 3 is putting a reward in place for getting the right things done without procrastination. Putting a reward in place can be a huge help because it always feels good to get a cookie after you work out. It always feels good to get a little prize after you work hard. And so if you can create an incentive to be self-disciplined, then you are more likely to be self-disciplined. So maybe try out putting a reward after you finish those things without procrastinating. Point number 4 is break a task into smaller, more manageable parts. Work on a task over time, not just in one crunched period of time. This is something that my dad found really helpful for him when I interviewed him. He said that when he was able to work on things over time rather than just cramming it, he was able to do those things much more efficiently and not procrastinate them. So break a task into smaller, more manageable parts. And then lastly, point number 5 is find accountability. Find accountability. Share your goals with someone that you trust and create external motivation to get those things done on time. When you have someone else that's keeping you in check, it can be a lot easier to make those goals, make those things that you want to get done, actually get done. So let's go over quickly the 5. First one is figure out the root cause of your procrastination and address it directly. Point number 2 was make a to-do list and master your schedule. Point number 3 was put a reward in place for getting the right things done without procrastinating. Point number 4 was break a task into smaller, more manageable parts. And lastly, point number 5 was find accountability. These 5 steps will help you to become a master at self-discipline, and I encourage you guys to try them out. Now, here's how I want to close. I love what my friend Tanner said when I had the chance to interview him. This is what he said when I asked him, Tanner, how do you overcome procrastination? He said, Ben, this is what I do. I trade short-term rewards for what I want in the long run. If you can learn to do this, you will be a master at self-discipline. Trading short-term rewards, trading short-term rewards for what I want in the long term. That's such a beneficial mindset, and it goes so contradictory to what we learned about our brain. It goes contradictory to instant gratification. But if we can train our minds to pursue hard work, to pursue discipline, rather than instant gratification, good things are in store. And so I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a ton. And now I hope you can go out and conquer procrastination. Have a good one.